Yes, it will. Okay. Okay. I think we can get started. So welcome everyone. Thank you so much for being interested in the Tech Congress Fellowship. This is our first, I guess, sort of like official open info call for recruitment. So you're getting me fresh, but you're also getting me not quite off book. But I'm gonna walk through everything. And we're so glad that you're here. So the idea behind Tech Congress was started, we now have been around for 11 years. So it was started by our founder and executive director, Travis Moore. Um, and it was because he was a staffer in Congress and needed to work on a bill around that included technology, and he didn't know enough about it. He felt like to do that effectively, and then he couldn't find anyone else in the institution who knew either. When he was working for Congressman Henry Waxman, and when Henry Waxman retired, Travis left and started Tech Congress. So that's how we all came to come to be here. So I'm Grace McKinney, the executive or the deputy director at Tech Congress. And then Alina, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi everyone. Thanks so much for joining. We were kind of waiting with bated breath to see who would join, if anyone at all. So we're really excited to see you all on the call. My name is Alina. I'm the Senior Outreach and Programs Manager with Tech Congress. I've been with Tech Congress for about 6 years now. So I've been really fortunate to just watch it grow and help be a part of that growth. And I lead a lot of the recruitment and selections process. So at the end of the call, I'll drop my email in the chat. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out.
Awesome. Maya, do you want to introduce yourself?
I'm Maya. I am the program associate at Tech Congress. I've been with Tech Congress for about 2 years now.
And then tomorrow, are you still on the call?
Yes. Hey, folks. My name is Timur Razik. I'm the communications manager here at Tech Congress. Really excited to meet you all and be here with you today.
Awesome. Okay. So our I already got a little bit into the background of how we kind of came to be, but I'll tell you a little bit about our theory of change and why we think this fellowship is important beyond just giving and why we think this fellowship is important. So the first of which is it gives people like you an opportunity to get experience working in Congress, in the institution. And I know for some of you on the call, I'm going to guess that some of you have never worked in government at all. Some of you may have worked in government, but perhaps never in a legislature, and so that and or perhaps like never on tech policy. And so that's like number one, the biggest kind of point of the fellowship is to help people with technology expertise to pivot, like in some cases, often pivot their careers, but really dig into how to write, how to contribute to tech policy, and kind of enter into the tech policy ecosystem. So by our count, and then the second reason is because we think Congress needs to understand technology better and needs to be able to legislate technology better. That leads to our theory of change, which is there's about 3,500, 4,000-ish staff in Congress. And by our count, only about 3% have meaningful training or experience with technology. So the good news is that Congress is a tiny place, especially compared to most of my career before this I spent in the executive branch. So the executive branch is about 2.5 million people, and Congress is about 3,500 to 4,000. So Congress is a small place, and our intervention with the fellowship is working. So we are, in fact, bringing technologists in, which is great. But our vision for this is that if there are about 3,500 staffers within Congress, we think that of those 35, about 600 of them meaningfully contribute to policy that in any way affects tech policy, affects technology, or is affected by technology. And so we believe, and so by our count, like approximately any piece of legislation is likely going to pass through about 10 hands. So if about 600 staffers would work on a piece of legislation related to technology, 10% of that, we want at least one technologist at the table. So we think there needs to be at least 60 people with a background in technology within Congress. And to be honest, that's where we're at now. And we anticipate that goal potentially growing because more and more, it already has grown, the number of people the number of people who touch something related to tech policy. Um, because tech policy in and of itself is growing because technology is growing. And so, as an organization, as I said, our three objectives is to cultivate cross-sector leaders, so that is potentially all of you, catalyze Congress to realize that it has a tech deficit and to hire and to keep Congress up to date. I would say that Congress does now largely realize that it has a tech deficit, which is great, but they're lagging on the actually hiring people, so hence the fellowship. We are non-ideological, so we are nonpartisan. We do not take any positions on issues. Um, and uh, and we also recruit for a bipartisan cohort every year. So our goal is to be about 50-50. It's usually give or take like a person. And then finally, diversity and inclusion are core to what we do. Tech Congress encourages applicants from a range of backgrounds, experiences, and perspectives, like I said, including ideological, including those from underrepresented communities in technology and in Congress. We specifically, when we are building a cohort, when we're going through selections after applications close and we're going through selections, we are specifically trying to build a balanced cohort and balanced in many different ways. People from different backgrounds, different like experiences, some people from academia, maybe some people from government, definitely some people from private industry, and people from both sides of the aisle. And then, for this round, or for this year, our applications are due by 11:59 p.m. Eastern on June 25th. Right now, so for eligibility, you have to be a citizen or a DACA recipient to be eligible. We have two tracks. We have an early career and a mid-career track. Our early career track, you have to have between 2 to 7 years of full-time experience, or have graduated from a master's or PhD, a relevant master's or PhD program. Our mid to senior career track is 8 years plus of full-time experience. And if you have, actually, this is important to note, if you have 7 years of experience, you should select both tracks on your application because if you have 7 years, that's when we're going to start to parse into like really get into your resume and try to figure out exactly where you're going to land. But otherwise, and if you have more than 7 years or if you have less than 7 years, please choose the relevant track. And then for applications, so I do want to address the use of AI in applications. We are absolutely not going to tell you not to use AI in your application. That would be pointless because we have no way to enforce it, and also it would be hypocritical. But I am going to remind you that everyone applying has has access to the same LLMs and access to the same Tech Congress website. If you want your application to stand out, feel free to use AI, but please use it well because I can't read the same 4 essays over and over again like we did last summer. It drove me insane. Also, I would encourage you to check out the FAQ section on our website, which gives a lot of visibility into who we're looking for, including we have a few specific tracks that I'll get into in just a moment. That's something that we've been experimenting with over the past couple years is having a few specific verticals, but I'll get into the details there shortly. Also, on the application, we do ask you to list references up front, so we have them, so we can, move quickly once we get to the point of checking references. But rest assured that we will let you know before we contact any of your references. And I also would really encourage you to read the blog and listen to podcasts that we put out a couple years ago for insight into the organization and insight into the application process. The blog post, especially, I would say in almost every interview, we get the question of like, what does the fellowship look like day to day? And I frankly can't really give you a straight answer because it really depends on the office where you end up getting placed. The best place for you to learn about what your fellowship could look like is by reading our day in the life blogs that we have a bunch of our different alumni have written, so you can get a sense of the range. There is a really big range, and Alina is going to get into a few like examples of our alums. Um, so for how the fellowship itself works, you are applying to start in January of 2027. The first 3 weeks of the fellowship are focused on orientation. So we expect people to come in without any policy experience. If you have a little, great, but the training is assuming that you don't. So we train you on how to write legislation, how to write a memo, how to draft an oversight letter, how to plan and write questions for a hearing. And we talk about how Congress itself works, how it fits into government, how it fits into like the public interest tech ecosystem, because there is I would say a much larger contingent of like public interest technologists who work in agencies at the federal level, but you know all the way down to state and local as well. And so we want you to meet those people because you end up if you're in tech policy, you end up being a little bit special just because it's a little bit more of a niche. But it's really helpful to get kind of plugged into that larger network. Um, and uh, so like I said, we go through all of those. Oh, and then this past year, part of helping you get to know government and how Congress and like sort of the congressional ecosystem work is we did field trips this year to CRS, the Congressional Research Service, GAO, the Government Accountability Office, and we always do an event with a local alumni. Actually, occasionally alumni will come into town for this because sometimes they're nosy and they want to meet the new cohort. So we always do an event with alumni so you can get to meet a bunch of alums who always have like really good advice. And they're usually pretty cool, we think. We do select them. And then, so that's the first 3 weeks approximately. We usually start like the first full week in January. So after orientation, then is placement. And so towards the end of orientation, we start to after we've really gone through like the tactical skills that you need, towards the end of orientation, we start to really focus on helping you figure out your placement and where you might want to spend the rest of your fellowship. So then after orientation, we kick off the placement process with a launch event on the congressional campus, and we invite a ton of offices so that they can come and meet you and you can meet them. And that's the House and Senate. We send it out to like the chiefs of staff all across the institution. And we and we help you prepare. We usually try and help people have somewhere between 3 and 10 members of Congress that they want to kind of start out with in placement, and then usually it grows. A lot of placement is like it's like a mini condensed job search. So you'll have a lot of conversation. You'll have a lot of like coffee chats, and you'll also have a lot of interviews. And then sometimes you'll have coffee chats that will turn out were in fact interviews. So it's like all of that. A part of that process is that we sit down with you and do some like help with matchmaking to help you work through what tech policy issues you are interested in. Like for example, if you're interested in it, and then help you figure out like where those match to. So if you're, for example, interested in autonomous vehicles, we would suggest that you reach out to someone on the Senate Commerce Committee or Senate Homeland Security Committee. Sometimes the committees, especially, will. The issue isn't always necessarily exactly where you think it's going to be. So we kind of help you with that. And then you have 2 full weeks to talk to the top staffers in Congress on the issues that you care about. And we also match you with alumni advisors. So we will assign you alumni advisors who've been in Congress recently to help you navigate those conversations and to make connections. We certainly help, like we being the internal staff, we certainly help, but we just haven't been in Congress as recently. So especially with the connections, our alumni advisors are invaluable. And they really help people like kind of work through the whole placement process. It can be a little overwhelming, and we really know that and acknowledge that. And like we encourage everyone to have a ton of conversations, but also to like take breaks if you need to. Like this past year, we definitely had a couple people where I was like, you're choosing between three offices. You just need to take a lap, like go to take a day, go to a museum. And then you can make a decision tomorrow. And so, right. So, like I said, for the day to day, you will be performing duties similar to other congressional staff by applying your experience in technology to a variety of work, which will include researching relevant policy making, interfacing with members and staff to educate them on these issues, writing legislation, preparing for committee hearings, markups, or investigations, including writing questions for witnesses. That's something that a lot of our fellows have really enjoyed doing. It's cool to hear a member ask your specific question in a hearing, and then also leading coalitions with partners and other groups, kind of within the institution and sort of like around the institution. So like I said, I would really encourage you to check out our day in the life blog posts. I would call out Joel Burks especially, and Lars, who worked for the Senate Small Business Committee. Lars is interesting because he has like a really good example of how he really used his like data science background to help the committee, like really specifically. And then and then I would also really call out Crystal Grant, who worked for Senator Warner. That's a really good one too. And Maya will drop those links in the chat so that they're at your fingertips. And then, so once you're placed, that's really kind of what you'll be doing. Like I said, it really depends day to day, both on the office and also just like depends on what's happening. Congress is a very reactive institution. So part of this fellowship is being ready to react to what happens. Like, for example, our 2020 fellows all of them thought that they would be working on very different things than they actually ended up working on, as I'm sure you can imagine. And stuff like that. I mean, that's sort of our obviously most like dramatic recent example. But stuff like that happens all the time. Sometimes something happens and something's in the news, and it's just like that's what you need to focus on. And so, to an extent, all of our fellows are to an extent kind of generalists, or you kind of at least have to be ready to be one that day if you need to be. And then throughout your fellowship, we do ongoing programming. Our goal is to help you succeed. So we connect you with everyone in Washington and in tech policy that we think can help you do that. So we try to have it, we always have like at least one event per month, and we try to kind of balance those every quarter by having like one networking event, one like more like speaker series, one what would be the word for this? Like I guess it's more like topic specific. I guess like digging into a specific topic. And then one more like social fun event. So we try to kind of balance that every quarter ish. And then we also offer career coaching and support. So you get 3 free sessions with a career coach. I'm actually revamping that a little bit this year, so that by the time any of you will get here next year, we'll have tried my new system out. And you will have access to our Slack, which means that you'll have access to all of our alums as well. And our alumni are really lovely, and I joined Tech Congress a little more than 2 years ago, and I was so pleasantly surprised how engaged our alums are. So many of our alums are like, they took this fellowship because they are really interested in this space, and then they're interested in what you're doing too. So that's a really great part of Tech Congress. Alina, do you want to take over and highlight a couple of our alums?
Yeah, definitely. So I'll go ahead and highlight Victoria Howard. Victoria has a little special place in my heart because her first day at Tech Congress was also my first day at Tech Congress. She was part of the first cohort that I was working with Tech Congress for. And I think also she and a lot of other fellows, I can also highlight another one, they really embody kind of the journey that we hope this fellowship takes you on. Like Grace said, a lot of times folks are really interested in working in policy, but they don't have the connections or the work experience to be able to automatically jump in. And so this fellowship is like a great way to provide to let you try it out, to let you learn kind of like we're paying you to learn essentially. But you also have a safety net, which is the staff and the programming that we provide. So it's a very kind of supportive environment. So Victoria, before the fellowship, worked as a software engineer and a product manager at Cards for Humanity. And then she was involved with organizing in Chicago, which is where she was living at a local state level, and really found herself being interested in policy. So she joined the fellowship and she served with former Speaker Nancy Pelosi. Victoria's fellowship started in 2020, and so that was the start of COVID. So, one thing, as Grace will highlight a little bit later, one thing that we look for in our fellows is that they're very adaptable, because sometimes you come in wanting to work on specific issues and then something happens and you're really going to have to pivot and kind of all hands on deck help out. And so Victoria helped advise the speaker and staff on disinformation, Section 230, which is like content moderation, platform accountability, data privacy, cyber threats, autonomous vehicles, 5G, broadband, antitrust. She also helped support all of the 2020 COVID relief legislation with the White House and the Senate, which included writing a provision or helping write a provision for $7 billion for internet accessibility and broadband. After the fellowship, she really kind of fell in love with the public interest tech space and just the policy space. And so she worked in public interest philanthropy, and then worked for a little bit in the executive branch and served as the director of AI policy and strategy at the Department of Commerce. And then went kind of back to working in philanthropy. And so she's an example of a fellow who came in without any government experience, but really just wanted to try and see if this was for her, and really ended up kind of changing the direction of her career because of it. So I would say, and definitely would encourage you all to read Joel and Lars and Crystal's Day in the Life post. I don't want to ramble on for too long, but look at those posts, and then also check out our LinkedIn. A lot of times we highlight kind of what our fellows and alumni are up to post fellowship, and that gives you a really good sense of kind of where folks have gone afterwards.
Thanks, Lena. Um, And yeah, like Alina said, people go to several like kind of different places after the fellowship. We would say like usually about a third like stay in government, which could be Congress, but could kind of also kind of includes like agency roles. About a third go to like civil society, so either nonprofits or academia, sometimes back to academia in some cases. And then about a third go to the private sector, often back to the private sector. Which is great though too, because like I was talking to one of our alums, I think like last summer, and he like after the fellowship, he just went back to the private sector and like he enjoyed his time, and then but sometimes people realize Congress is not for them, which is why it's a really great way to sign up for only a year. But he's gotten like really involved in his like local city council and how they're handling it was like a specific like tech acquisition, I think something around parking meters there. So yeah, so that's part of what we mean when we say like the one of the big objectives for the fellowship is to create like cross-sector leaders, even if you don't stay in government. So I'm going to get a little bit into the selections process and kind of what we look for. This is going to give you a little bit of color on what is largely on the application, but I'll give it to you just so you get a little bit of background. So what we're really looking for is tech ability, tech translation, ability to work well on teams, and is this a career catalyst? And so what that means is like we are much less likely to accept someone who has like worked in Congress for a couple years, even if they haven't worked in Congress for a while. We just like we don't never do it. It's just like you just are, even if you're incredibly qualified, you just move kind of down to farther down the list of the qualified applicants. And we like to be transparent about that. Um, and then yeah, tech ability I think is pretty self-explanatory. Tech ability though is that's a really broad, like we're very broad in how we think about that, and I will get into the verticals in a moment. Big thing is tech translation. Like can you explain technology concepts to a non-technical person. That is most of what this job is when you really drill down to it. And then ability to work on teams. Yeah, like I said, Congress is you really become a part of the office and act as a staffer during this fellowship. So we want you to be able to, we want our fellows to be able to do that effectively. So our expanded verticals, which is like what constitutes a technologist, which is harder and harder to define. It probably always was, but I think people just sort of pretended that it wasn't before this. Um, so we have definitely had fellows from more untraditional tech backgrounds. For example, we had someone who had been a journalist covering tech policy for many years. We've had people coming from biotech, and we also have had several really successful fellows come from like climate-oriented tech experience. And so last year we introduced specific verticals, and we're expanding that this year. So this year the verticals are climate tech, digital service delivery, which what when we're saying that we really mean like delivery to like usually from within a public institution. So even if you work for the private sector, like have you worked with government? That's really kind of what we mean there. And then innovation and research, so R&D. And a big reason why we added these verticals is both because these are issues that we've seen again and again over the last several years. So we're seeing a pattern that Congress is going to keep thinking about these, and these are going to keep coming up. And also, we are trying to get a little more specific in order to get people to apply who maybe in the past with those kinds of backgrounds thought that they didn't like count as like a like I don't know like like they didn't think they counted because it wasn't like a traditional like private sector like software engineer background. So it's kind of twofold why we're adding those. We tried them out for the first time 2 years ago with a climate tech and a digital service delivery fellow, and that went really well. And then this year we are trying we've tried it again with those two verticals, and so we're expanding it this year. Um, and when you apply, you do not have to apply for one of those verticals. You can just apply. If you are applying for one of those verticals, we do ask that you check that on your application so that you can be assessed within that vertical. And also, we ask that you write your policy essay related to the vertical that you're interested in. And I will say, like, if you select that you want to be evaluated within a vertical, you still will be evaluated within like kind of our general pool. So like if you want to apply to be a climate tech fellow and we end up having a ton of climate tech applications, we will like assess you as a part of the climate tech vertical first, but then we also will assess you as a part of the larger pool, especially if you have other experience that isn't just climate tech. And that's something that we'll kind of get into people specifically once we get into like interviews and stuff. So none of this should be a surprise at any point, but we're trying to just make sure that people kind of are understanding how best to self-select in the application. Yeah, and ultimately at our core, we are looking for people who understand how tech works and are able to break it down for people who are not technical. If that is you, we want you to apply. Um, and I think that's everything that I needed to cover. Did I forget anything, Alina?
No, I don't think so. I would just emphasize that so for our verticals, those are just we're looking to have maybe 1 to 2 fellows with in one of those 3 verticals. If you do not belong to the like if you're not interested in any of those verticals, if you do not like have expertise in any of those verticals, that doesn't impact your application. Like selecting no on the application doesn't hurt your application, just gives us an indication as to what
Yeah.
issues you're interested in working on. And that's something also we ask you throughout the interview process is I think we ask you almost every single round, like what tech policy issues are you interested in working on? And that's just so that we can build a balanced cohort. So responding to like Rita's question in the chat, like we have like fellows in this cohort that we just welcomed in. Looking at fellows who are have expertise in cybersecurity, in banking, like in banking technology, folks who have
Manufacturing.
exactly manufacturing, people who have experience with uh like like algorithms and children's online safety. So We don't typically like hold a number of slots for, a specific background. We're just trying to these issues are something that we've been seeing as like emerging in Congress and needing a lot of like technical help. And so if you do not fall within one of those verticals, that is okay as well. You do not have to in order to apply. So yeah, we try to build a cohort that has a variety of different like expertise skill sets. So that's I think the only thing that I would um add on.
Yeah, thank you. That was good to clarify, Alina. Probably, I would say for our upcoming cohort, not more than half of that cohort will include people within those specific verticals. So there are plenty of slots for people who aren't. Okay, we're gonna move on to Q&A. Maya, what do we have on the docket?
Yeah, so Alina has answered some of these questions, but I'll just like ask, like just say them again, just in case people aren't looking at the chat. So the first one, someone asked if fellows need clearance. You do not need, like our fellowship does not require clearance. Most of the work in Congress does not require clearance. I think, is it the Armed Services Committee, I think, requires
Yeah.
you to have a clearance?
So by and large, so our fellows do not have, we do not, you will not be sponsored to get a clearance. And also, if you have a clearance, we as Tech Congress can't hold it, and your office, in all likelihood, are not going to hold it either. So that's something to consider if you're trying to like keep a clearance, like if it's getting close to expiring. We're not really going to be able to help you with that, because it is actually, especially coming from the executive branch, it was really surprising to me how most staffers in Congress don't need any clearance at all. Yeah, armed services and intel do require clearance. However, those I think partially because of that, but even just regardless, those two committees don't really accept fellows, period. So that's like most of the committees where if you need a clearance, they're just not accepting fellows, and that's kind of how they handle it, which we just don't have any control over.
And then another question someone asked, is there anything with rare disease research? And I'll just read Alina's answer. So there are committees that have jurisdiction over this. Most of our fellows with that background end up working on biotech issues. So an example of one fellow, check out Crystal Grand's Day in the Life post because she had a background in genetics when she joined the fellowship. Another question, would someone from a less technical background advising private sector clients on tech policy and government affairs be appropriate for Tech Congress? So it depends on how much you're able to understand technical concepts, like we said earlier. If you're able to understand technical concepts and break it down to non-technical audiences in a way that makes sense, then you should apply. Someone asked to explain technologist concepts to members of Congress. So what are some examples of those concepts? So like how do LLMs work? What are ransomware attacks and so on? Does the professional experience have to be in one of the verticals? No, it does not. Someone asked, I've done some research on current and previous fellows and the work and teams they focused on, and I'm seeing my specific area of policy interest hasn't been represented yet by previous fellows. Would this be too niche and skews negatively for what Tech Congress is looking for, or are you open to new pathways / trailblazers?
Yeah, we definitely are. I mean, like we ended up with these verticals because we had like someone had to be the first person with that background. Yeah, so definitely.
Yeah, like I would say like Crystal, like we had never had a geneticist before. Similarly in this most recent cohort, Evan Straka
Mm-hmm.
is a UX like UI designer.
Mm-hmm.
And he worked with like delivering government services as a consultant, I believe. And we have never had a person with that kind of background before. And he is doing really, really great work right now, specifically on like government modernization. So yeah, like Grace said, someone has to be the first. So definitely recommend you apply.
Um, this kind of answered the next question I'm about to ask. You kind of answered this, Alina, but someone was asking if we've had more generalist technologists like UX researchers, designers, product managers, and so on.
We've had a ton of product managers. Yeah, for some reason, I mean, we certainly had other alums that had some design experience, but Evan is, yeah, Evan is our first one where that was like his area of expertise, and it seems to be going great. So,
And then someone also asked if we've had fellows who have experience with enterprise tech versus consumer tech.
Yeah, definitely.
Are there specific offices that are more interested in the in our verticals?
The offices don't know they're interested until we show up with the fellows, to be honest. We're kind of we're sort of using the verticals a little bit to signal to them that in some cases that they should be interested in this. But that is also how, like, partially with placement, we do really want, like, the reason why placement is fellow driven. So we're not matching you with a specific office because, like, it's not like an office or a few offices came to us and said that they like wanted experts in climate tech. We start with what you're interested in, and then we help you figure out what offices to target and where to interview. And not everyone ends up like in their dream, like in within their like top two offices. But we help you make sure that like you are going to be able to work in some capacity on what you want to work on. I mean, we hope anyway. Again, sometimes current events, sometimes the world has other plans.
Does having tech certifications hold weight on the application?
Yeah, absolutely.
Do fellows have an opportunity to support newly sworn in members of Congress?
Yeah, definitely. We definitely have had fellows go with freshman members. We have a fellow with a freshman member right now. Um, Jeremy, I'm forgetting because they're a freshman, so I haven't. They're weren't on my flashcards. So for and actually going with a freshman member is it can be a really good opportunity. So one of our former fellows, Candace Moy, was with Senator Welsh. No, it's a thumbs up was with Senator Welsh, who was a freshman senator, and from Vermont. And because um, uh, she, it's a trade-off because freshmen members they just don't have as much, like, they're new, so they don't have the clout, they don't have the pull, like, you're not necessarily you're probably not going to be driving on like a huge bill that ends up getting passed like within the time of your fellowship. However, what you do get, which is really incredible, is that like Candace with Senator Welch, like he came in and he didn't have a tech policy platform, and she defined what the tech policy platform for that office was that year that she served with them and still is. So it's definitely it's a really great opportunity.
I would definitely also add that, like, I feel like, I mean, my perception even coming into Tech Congress, like starting to work here was like, oh, like what is considered a successful fellow? A successful fellow is someone who passes legislation during their time in Congress. That is not true. And the latest, we like to say it's kind of a unicorn thing if you're able to pass a piece of legislation from like start to finish during your time as a fellow, just because it takes time and you have to build up like coalitions and support. And then obviously there's, as we go through an orientation, there's like reconciliation procedures, you know, it has to be passed in the House and Senate. But there's so many different policy making levers that we teach you about that you can employ as a staffer, such as writing a memo. And that's part of the reason we have it on the application. Writing a memo, writing oversight letters, planning hearings, conducting investigations. And so we teach you kind of how to do all that as fellows. But I would just say our definition of a successful fellow isn't necessarily exactly their outputs as a fellow. It's more that they're learning about the experience and they're figuring out kind of where they want to be after. So I would just caveat with that as well. Yeah. I will also
Uh,
caveat, we kind of understand a lot of people haven't written policy memos before, particularly if you haven't worked in government, which is the majority of our applicants. And so in the next like week or two, we're hoping right now we have, I think, a policy essay workshop from 2021 on our site. In the next week or so, we're hoping to update the website with a recording that we posted this year, which will also give you a little preview of what fellows learned during orientation. And it'll help walk you through the components of a good policy memo so that you can use that to help while you're crafting your application. And now I'm done. Sorry, Maya.
um, if you already live in DC, can you still use the relocation money in any way, for example, to move apartments?
No, you can't use the relocation money, but you do get we do cover we do give, I think it's $1,000 towards everyone's. Is that right, Alina? 1,000?
I think it's 2000.
2000 for the first month. I
Mhm.
thought relocation is too.
And both of them are two.
Oh, great. We give $2,000 for like first month of rent, so for the month of January, and that you can get. So you can apply that to your current rent, but you don't get the relocation money.
What does the interview timeline look like after applying?
Oh, good question. Alina, do you want to run through that schedule?
Yeah, definitely. So once applications close, we'll have to look through and read all of the applications, and that will take some time. So I would say that will take probably the majority of July. We'll then go into round one interviews. Round one interviews are 20-minute phone calls, like 20-minute phone calls. And then with like Grace and myself. And then we'll go into round two interviews, which will be 45-minute video interviews with Grace, myself, and Maya. And then we hope to have the cohort finalized by early November.
Yes, yes. So we'll make offers starting in October, and we want to have we want to have the cohort completely finalized by the beginning of November. Give people time to move if they need to, but even if they don't need to move, make plans.
We also like will send kind of like update emails kind of on where we are in the process, but then also like we do send out emails to folks who do not get in with some recommendations for other fellowships and other organizations that they should look into. So we try not to ghost anyone.
Is it possible to be remote for the fellowship?
Good question, and we'll update the script with this. No, this is an in-person fellowship, and that is because Congress is an incredibly in-person institution. We do like there are a few offices that do have remote. That you are able to be remote, but frankly, there just aren't enough of them that we can say that we can guarantee to someone that they would be able to be remote. So we just can't accept remote applications.
How should applicants balance academic/research contributions versus industry experience? Are technology policy papers, AI governance research, or papers valuable evidence to include?
No, don't send us your papers. I'm sure they're wonderful, but we just don't have time to read them.
What is the percentage of tech fellows who are converted into full-time staffers?
Oh, yeah. So like I said, about a third of our fellows tend to go to stay in government, but that isn't necessarily Congress. That I would say kind of the majority of that third, so it's like a little more than half of that third, usually go to agencies. I would say with each cohort, the past several years, each cohort has been between like 10 and 15. Usually one or two of a cohort will stay on in Congress. It is difficult to get a job in Congress largely because they have really small budgets. That's like why we're doing the fellowship because we're like we know you have small budgets, but you should spend some of it on hiring full-time technologists. However, last year we had 14 fellows and six of them got hired full-time. So we saw a huge uptick this year, and we're going to see if that holds true for next year or for this current year.
For the application for the digital service delivery track, can you share some examples of topics for previous memos?
Which was the track? Sorry.
Digital service delivery.
Um, we had we had a couple Medicare Medicaid ones last year. We had a really interesting one that was on like the free tax filing system. Do you remember any others, Alina, off the top of your head? Yeah.
No, but that is a good prompt to prepare that for the next
Yeah.
application
Yeah.
cycle so that we can provide examples.
I would say generally, when you're thinking about like writing your memo, focus less on what Congress has like done in the last year and focus more on like what you know a lot about, what you're passionate about, a problem that you see that not being addressed. Like the more kind of specific and nuanced you can get, I would say the better versus like focusing on a specific topic because Congress has addressed it recently.
For the resume slash CV redaction requirement, should applicants redact only their name and direct contact information, or should we also redact institution names, publication DOIs, grant numbers, advisor names, and other identifying details? Only redact your name and direct contact information.
Yeah. We know it would be a lot to ask you to redact like everything that's identifiable.
Can you speak to how fellows get placed on committees versus individual Congress members? Does the experience vary drastically?
Yeah, that's a great question. Um, so the way that fellows get placed on committees versus in personal offices, it's the same process. It's all part of the placement process. Most of our fellows, like in the current cohort, interviewed with both personal offices and committees, I would say generally. Like vast majority of our fellows at least interviewed with one committee. So it's essentially the same process. I mean, every single interview process for every single office that you interview with will be different than each other because we don't run them. They each run their own. And we specifically tell them to run their interview process as they would if they were hiring a full-time staffer, partially because we think that that makes it more likely that they will hire you on full-time since they have already essentially interviewed you. Um, so yeah, so in terms of like the placement process, it functions essentially the same. But in terms of like your experience working for a committee versus working in a personal office, the way that Alina usually describes this, which I really like and think is really makes a lot of sense, is like in a committee you're usually going more narrow and deep on something. Committees have more staff, they have more budget, so they have more staff. And they're already kind of focused around a specific set of issues anyway. So I would say committee work probably going to be like more research, a little more research heavy. Um, and then personal offices, it's more like wide and more surface level. Not there, you can certainly go deep on and will go deep on a few specific things, but you'll end up touching a lot more, and thus it'll have to be like a lot of it will have to be a little more surface level.
Do you work on site every day at the Hill or some remote? This is really dependent on the office or committee, but most of our, like Congress is very like a very in-person institution, so most fellows go in every day.
Yeah. We do have one fellow who's mostly remote this year, but that's a real uh what's the word I'm looking for?
Outlier?
Anomaly.
Yep.
It's an anomaly.
I'm curious how fellows are perceived by full-time staffers on the Hill.
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, I'll tell you like my perception of their perception. I can't answer this like, for every single staffer, obviously. Generally though, Congress is very under-resourced and understaffed. And it's because it's incredibly politically unpopular for Congress to vote to give themselves or their staff like more money, like to give them more monetary resources. So Congress most Congress staffers are happy to have help on that doesn't cost them anything, frankly. And they're happy to have help and they're happy to and I think especially with technology, like it is an issue that is only continuing to like it's only getting broader and more complicated and more relevant. So to be honest, like our fellows have a really good reputation on the Hill. Um, and there are many different fellowships that work like a fellowship is actually it's fairly like a fairly common way for offices to get a little extra staff. And there are a lot of different kinds of fellowships. But our fellows tend to have a very good perception.
Another question, any advice or resources from alumni for the application slash interview? And Alina, thank you for plugging the June 17th alumni recruitment panel, which I will drop the link to in a second. But that is June 17th. It's virtual from 5:45 p.m. to 7 p.m. Eastern time. Let's see. What is the recommended essay length, and do we need to include letters of recommendation in the application?
What's our word count, Alina?
So each essay has a word count. I believe it's like 150, 200, and 350. But you can definitely it's like in the wording of the question. For the policy memo, for example, it's 350 word limit. So we're looking for it to be pretty concise.
Mhm.
A tip on the policy memo is to define all the technical terms. Remember your audience.
Mhm.
Your audience in this scenario is non-technical folks. And so this is a way for you to be able to show off your technical translation skills.
Mhm.
No letters of recommendation required. We will contact your references and we will let you know before we contact them. So we just require their contact information in the application. So just like email and phone number for each of your two references.
I understand that there's a travel budget. Does this mean some travel is guaranteed? What if travel is in excess of the budget?
Yeah, so the travel budget you get, it's 1,500, right? I think.
I can't remember off the top of my head,
I think
but
it's I think it's 1,500 for your travel budget. Um, Travel isn't guaranteed, so we are actually right now, I am reminding our fellows that they have this travel budget and being like, please use your travel budget because every year about half of the fellows don't use it. So it's up to you if you use it, but like please use it. Like we have it available to you on purpose. Um, and and if it's in excess, you'll have to just pay the remainder. Unless it is, well, you'll have to just pay the remainder unless it is a travel to your district. So if you're with a personal office and you travel to that office's district, we ask people to if it's going to be an excess of the travel budget, we ask that you contact us and we'll figure out like we still might not cover the entirety of the trip, but we might cover a little more. We think it's really important for people to go visit the district if they can, if they're in a personal office.
Can we say that this role is more writing intensive than coding intensive? Is any of this role similar to more traditional software engineering roles?
That's a really good question. Generally, I would say yes, it is much more writing intensive versus coding intensive. Like, and that is why we talk about this for a lot of people. For a lot of people, this is a big career pivot. That said, some of our fellows absolutely use our fellows absolutely use their coding skills. That's where I would say check out Lars's Day in the Life blog. He really gets into like how he used his actual like coding skills to like help the committee and how that was relevant. We also had like we also had a fellow build out a like a scheduling tool for his office just because he got like annoyed. So there's opportunities to code, and if that's a big priority for you, I would say that's something to kind of focus on in placement. But generally, this is going to be more writing intensive, and there are, I would say, almost no roles where it is more coding than writing. You might get something that's like 50-50, but it's going to be a lot. It's likely going to be more writing than you are currently doing in your job.
Where do fellows go after Tech Congress? Do most stay on the Hill and in government, or do people go into or back to the private and nonprofit sectors as well?
I think I answered this. So about a third stay in government, either in Congress and or in like agencies. About a third go to or sometimes back to civil society, so nonprofits or academia, and about a third go to or back to the private sector.
Someone is also asking if we could share resources to the other fellowships we often recommend.
We don't usually plug our competition, to be honest.
yeah, I would say the Horizon Fellowship has a good like link for different like tech policy, kind of like if you're looking to get into tech policy. So I would recommend checking, I think it's called like emerging tech policy. I can drop the link in there. And so I would recommend you just check that out.
What I will say is that if you don't have the number of years of experience yet to qualify for Tech Congress, these fellowships will be different because they're focused on more like building and modernization, but coding it forward if you're currently in school is a great one. And then the U.S. Digital Core, which is housed within GSA, so within the federal government, within GSA, they accept people straight out of undergrad. And again, that's not tech policy generally. It's more building, but those are really great fellowships.
Someone asked if there's clearance requirements. No, there are no clearance requirements. I think those are all the
Perfect.
questions.
And we're
Yeah.
right at the end. Okay, thank you all again for joining us. We really appreciate your interest and we hope to see your applications. One more thing that I will add is that we do have a policy that staff do not do one-on-one like conversations with people like with applicants during open recruitment. You are welcome to reach out to previous people, but we won't do one-on-one conversations. That's why we do several info calls. Yeah, I think that's everything. Anything else to close us out, Alina?
Not really, but definitely encourage you to check out our LinkedIn, to check out our June 17th alumni panel. That will be a really excellent opportunity to learn more from the alumni themselves about, why they chose to apply, what the process was like for them, any advice they have, how the fellowship was. But yeah, we hope to see your applications very, very soon. A reminder that the deadline is 11:59 p.m. Eastern on June 25th. And good luck, and we hope to see your applications.
Thanks so much, everyone. Have a good one.